You probably had to Google how to stop procrastinating at least once in your life. And maybe that's exactly what brought you here. Or maybe this video itself has been sitting in your watch later for way too long, and now finally you got to it. Even as someone in the productivity niche, I've had my fair share of putting off work until it's absolutely necessary to get done with it. But throughout the years, I've learned to overcome procrastination. In this video, I will guide you through the 4 simple things I did to stop procrastinating. Hey friend, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Dan, and in this channel we explore the strategies and tools to become more effective and productive. So if you're anything like me and you're always eager to learn more about productivity and performance, please consider subscribing to the channel. And now, let's continue with this video. I have tried so many methods to stop procrastinating, sometimes succeeding and sometimes not. And I finally came to the conclusion that there were only 2 real reasons why I found myself procrastinating. Either the task was too overwhelming and I just couldn't bring myself to start, or it was too boring and, well, I just couldn't bring myself to start. If this is true for you too, and it most likely is, then this is the perfect video for you. The steps I'll discuss today are simple enough to follow and should help you get excited about your work and get started. So let's dive in. There's this old joke, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time, and that's how you should look at your projects too. When you think of the work, you may think of it as a massive undertaking. But when you actually do the work, it's just a series of different tasks that add up to one big project. And that's why the first and the simplest way to beat procrastination is to break the task into smaller subtasks. Now, why does this work? Well, while you're doing one bit of the task, you're only thinking about that bit. By breaking a big and scary task into smaller chunks and subtasks, you take care of that feeling of overwhelm. All of a sudden, you're not thinking about everything that you need to do. Your mind is only focused on the next small bit, the next action. Instead of just make a video on how to stop procrastinating on your to-do list, your list can look something like 1, I will write the script, 2, I'll record the video, and 3, I will edit the video. And you can even break this up into further subtasks, like within write the script, you can have research, writing, and editing. So what I really like to do is to break down tasks into something I can complete in 25 minutes or less. You might recognize this 25-minute period from the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes works wonders because it doesn't feel like a lot of time. It's a mental trick on your brain. Anyone can work for just 25 minutes. So, after breaking my task into something I can complete in 25 minutes, I simply set a timer for 25 minutes and I just get to work. And as you see yourself taking care of the smaller bits and making progress on your project, you're also generating momentum. And this is going to help you feel more motivated to carry on. You get stuff done and then the motivation naturally follows. And this is something that Jeff Hayden talks about in his book, The Motivation Myth. It talks about how we've got this idea of motivation all wrong. Here's what he says in the book. Motivation isn't something that you have, it's something that you get. He says that motivation is not the cause of the action, it is the result of the action. So in other words, action comes first and then motivation comes second. So as you cut your task up and complete one part of it at a time, you're going to keep reinforcing your will to move forward with your project. Another great benefit of breaking down your task is keeping you on your toes. By just seeing that one item, make the video, on your list for the entire week, it becomes easy to convince yourself that you can keep pushing the task off to a day later. But when you break the problem down, you can actually see what needs to be done and get a better idea of when to do which part of it. And you can even take this step further by creating deadlines for yourself before the actual deadline. And this is essentially what the second step is all about. So in a study, 2 groups of university students were assigned to write 3 papers in 3 weeks. The first group was given the opportunity to turn in all 3 papers at any point during those 3 weeks, while the second group had strict weekly deadlines for each paper. In the end, the group with the best results was the second one, the ones with the strict deadlines. Students who had to pick their own deadlines did pretty poorly. So why is this important? Because when you have a big project, something that's going to take you more than one day, maybe weeks or months, you can't really see the finish line. And when you can't see the finish line, this is what happens. You procrastinate on starting on the task because you think, oh, I still have so much time. A classic example here is university exams. You're given the date of the exam at the beginning of the semester. So on day 1, you already know the date of the exam. So what should really happen next? Well, you'd start to study for that exam. But that's never what really happens, is it? The semester goes by and you always find excuses to not study. There's party, there's hanging out with friends. Oh, and also what a great time to watch all 9 seasons of How I Met Your Mother again.
It's gonna be legendary.
You do everything but study. And then, as the exam date looms dangerously close, you finally force yourself to frantically study the entire semester in a few days. You just make it. But great students, the ones that are normally calm before an exam, prepare differently. They break the entire semester into small parts, that's the first strategy, and then assign dates to complete each task. They think in terms of like milestones rather than just one finished line. And that's also what I do when it comes to big projects. I create additional deadlines leading up to the final deadline. Working backward from that true deadline, I break a big scary project into multiple milestones. And I leave some room for a buffer in the event that things take longer than expected. And believe me, they almost always do. A great way to combine both these strategies, breaking projects down and using milestones, is by using a technique called backwards planning. The way that I break my projects down and assign myself deadlines is through a simple planning exercise called backwards planning. The idea is to begin with the end in mind. I have a video on just this concept of beginning with the end in mind, so feel free to check that out as well. Alright, so what exactly is backwards planning? Essentially, it's defining your end goal and identifying the steps and sequence needed to achieve that goal. But you start from the end result, your outcome, and work backwards until the beginning of the project. So here's an example of how I recently used this strategy. A few months ago, I decided that it was time to give my website a new look, a new design. For the last few years, I just used this minimalistic template and I wanted to give my website a fresh face, a more professional look, if you will. So this was obviously a massive project. I needed to think about styles, colors, how I wanted navigation to work, right down to the details like what font should I use. I also wanted to provide a better experience. So for example, that meant making the website a lot faster. And for that to happen, I needed to move it to a new server. So you see that it was a project with lots of moving parts. So using backwards planning, you start by asking yourself 2 questions. The first one is, when do you want to complete this project? In other words, what is the last deadline? And the second one is, what does the final result look like? Clearly define what the outcome is. So for my website redesign, I knew I wanted it to be live in 3 months. And the outcome was having a new design that embodied the idea that I wanted, a more professional look. So what exactly qualifies as a professional look to me? With a quick brain dump, I was able to write down everything that came to mind of what I needed. For example, a pleasing reading experience. So this means a nice font, good balance between text and white space, a color that it's easy on the eyes. Using colors associated with productivity. I knew blue was a strong candidate, but I needed to research more about color theory. A good navigation experience. So for example, one thing missing that I saw on other websites that I really liked was a Start Here page. When you have hundreds of articles, it can get overwhelming to new users to know where to start. So the goal of the Start Here page is to solve that problem. So I knew that I needed one. I continued this exercise until I had written down everything that I could think of. I love doing this sort of brain dump. It's wonderful to just kind of transport everything from your brain to a piece of paper. Okay, so I defined my last deadline and my desired outcome. I can now start planning backwards. So here's how to do it. You start from your end goal and ask yourself, what's the last step before that? So the last step before pushing the live version of the new design is double checking every single page. Okay, now I ask myself, and what's the last step before that? Well, let's say that the final step was building the Start Here page. So there's that. Again, I ask myself, and before that? And I keep writing the steps from the end to the beginning. Eventually, I'll get down to my very first task, which in this case was to sketch the workflow of pages needed. And because now I have a detailed overview of all the tasks in order, I can assign deadlines from the end of the project right down to the beginning. So maybe I assign 1 day to push the new design to life, and 2 days to build the Start Here page, and so on and so forth. And because we overestimate the amount of work we can do, a good tip here is to add buffer time to your project. So if you think you can do it in 3 months or 12 weeks, perhaps try to schedule deadlines to complete it in 10 weeks instead. So now you have a concrete plan on what you need to do at any given moment. The last thing you'll need is a strategy that fuels your execution. Now, most projects, even if it's something that you've been dreaming about your whole life, will always have boring tasks. Coming back to my project of redesigning the website, researching the best fonts for readability experience is not my idea of fun. For other people, yes, absolutely, this is a dream task. But for me personally, it was a bit boring. So what I like to do when I have boring tasks is making a game out of it. So there's a thing called Parkinson's law. This law states that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Again, think of exams in university. If suddenly the date of the exam was moved from 3 months from today to next week, now there's a fire forcing you to study. So you can take advantage of Parkinson's law on smaller tasks by giving yourself less time than you think you need to complete that task. So here's how I do this. The first thing I need to know is how much time do I think I need for my task. So for my example, I think that 4 hours is a reasonable time frame to research fonts for readability. So if I plan to do it in 4 hours, according to Parkinson's law, it will take 4 hours to do it. But what if I try to make it a game? What if instead I give myself 3 hours or only 2? Suddenly I'm on a race against the clock. So what I really like to do at this point is I put a clock for say 2 hours on my phone, I do start, and now I have a 2-hour mark to beat. And even if I take 3 instead of 2, I still save 25% of my original time frame. All because I made a game out of it. A competition against myself, if you will. And you can use the same technique to work faster on boring tasks, or any task really. Now, beating procrastination can involve many more things, like getting rid of distractions, optimizing your environment, making yourself accountable to someone else, and even taking effective breaks. But the first step to solving this huge problem is actually wanting to do the work. And that's what the ideas in this video are all about. When you design your own work as something that you're excited about and something that you actually believe you can achieve, magical things start to happen. The satisfaction of ticking one task or subtasks from your to-do list and actually producing work that you are proud of is going to push you to do the next task, and then the next task, and then the next one, till you complete that project you were really excited about. And when you start designing your work such that it is just challenging enough, you no longer need to pick up your phone every couple of minutes just for that tiny rush of adrenaline. Work itself is giving you that rush and satisfaction. And you should see that change too. By following these ideas, this could be the last time you need to Google how to stop procrastinating. If you enjoyed this video, you also love my next one, where I talk about the 5 magical steps to prevent procrastination. So go ahead and watch that one right now. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.